This is the Open Chats with the Open Institute. Welcome to the Open Chats. I'm your host, Esther Njagi, and this is the podcast where we bring you the conversations that matter about open governance, civic empowerment, and all the other things that citizens are doing so that they can be able to access opportunity. Welcome to the show. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thanks so much, Esther, for having me. My name is Tracy Chambers, the founder and CEO of Grow ECD.
So South Africa has really big ambitions around early childhood development, which from now on we're going to call ECD, just so that people understand what we're talking about. But the reality on the ground is very different. In Kenya, we say kwa ground vitu ni different, which means things are different on the ground. So could you paint for us a picture of what it really looks like from your perspective?
So the South African ECD landscape has evolved to largely be a government-directed but privately implemented opportunity. So government sets policy around health and safety, governance, policy around curriculum, and then really women who have a passion for children start ECD businesses. Some are registered as NGOs, some are registered as private businesses in their communities. Mostly it starts with her looking off, maybe she's had a baby, 3 or 4 children, and then over time, based on the her community, that grows. And in some cases, she one of our biggest centers, she's looking now after 450 children, and then it really becomes a serious business and a complex business. But she doesn't actually understand and know business. Nobody trained her. She started with this passion for children. And so the landscape in South Africa is that we have more than 42,000 ECDs in the country. They serve about 1.7 million children. Most of them are not financially sustainable. In many cases, the quality is very low. She's doing the best with the little she has. She's really struggling to pay salaries. There's a lot of teacher turnover because the wages are very low. And parents are sending these children to these ECDs, but they're not getting the quality education they need to be school ready by the age of 5.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think is the gap? What do you think is the reason why they're not getting the education that they need? And we're also going to talk about a report that you did called Thrive by 5. So I'm going to ask you a few questions around that, but you could just dive into it a little bit and tell us, what do you think the gap is?
I think it's quite complex. I think the gap is one about know-how. So, if you've never seen high quality education, early education, because number one, you never went to one yourselves. Number two, there isn't one in your community. What ends up happening is almost a copycat strategy. So I copy what the one in my neighborhood looks like, and overall you're copying a low quality model because you just don't know how to do anything different. So that's the one aspect. The other aspect is money. The model is largely funded by parents. So parents are paying fees to send their children to these communities, and many of them are poor themselves. Or many of them are low wage earners and needing their children to be taken care of. And so the money flowing into the sector isn't sufficient to cover the cost. Government subsidization is growing, but it's still a big gap. And then in the South African context, we have very good laws. So we're very good lawmakers, we're very good policy makers, but often those policies are completely disconnected from reality. So the requirements to get your center registered and fully compliant are very high standards. And in many cases, the community in which she's established her ECD center doesn't even have doesn't have sanitation, but yet she has to have sanitation in an ECD center to get registered. So there's often a mismatch between what the policy says and the reality to actually make that happen on the ground. And that's causing a lot of stuckness in our system. Then she can't access subsidization. And that becomes sort of a vicious cycle.
Yeah, I think that policy issue seems to be so African in nature. Maybe it happens elsewhere, but I think a lot of us say we have good policies, but on the ground, implementation always seems to be a challenge. So yeah, I read this report that you wrote called Thrive by 5. I think it focuses in 2024. And you mentioned that most of the children that you have enrolled in early learning programs, most of them were either falling behind or falling far behind. Could you tell us more about that?
Just to make a correction, we South Africa has written the report Thrive by 5. Grow ECD hasn't written the report.
Okay.
It's done by an organization called Data Drive. And they've developed a tool called the ELOM assessment, the Early Learning Outcomes Measures. And we did one thing South Africa's really done well over the last 5 years is it has become a data-driven sector. And Data Drive, who ran this study, was able to do a massive census and understand how many children are in and out of ECD. And then every 2 years, they go and test a substantial amount of children. Over 5,000 children are tested. And then they release this report based on the findings. And they do that across a section of communities. And we were using that Thrive by 5 data to track our progress, to understand where the gaps are in the country, where the gaps are in children's development. It's pretty much focused on children's development, so that we then know what to do, and also they do a lot of work to understand, what we would call sort of triangulation. So, is there a higher chance of a child doing well if the teacher is trained formally? Yes or no? Is there a higher chance of a child doing well if there's quality equipment? Yes or no? So that we're also starting to understand what are the inputs that we need, not just, children aren't doing well, but what are the inputs that we need to change to ensure that children are thriving by 5? And sadly, the results are not good. And unfortunately, the results have not changed from the first time they did the survey to the second time they did it. So look, there are more children entering ECD, and often from a lower income communities. So the quality of the service provision is not good. But we have a problem. Children, more than 50% of children in South Africa are not ready for school by the age of 5. They are already falling behind, significantly falling behind.
Yeah, wow, that's really sobering. But I like that you use that data to drive the kinds of initiatives that you build at Grow ECD. And we're going to talk more about that. But before we go on, let's take a short break. We'll be right back, so don't go anywhere.
At the Open Institute, we see a future that is managed by informed and facts-driven citizens. In this open society, the government is open, responsive, and accountable to its citizens, delivering services at the level that they deserve. We are a non-profit organization based in Nairobi, Kenya, and we collaborate with governments, citizens, and other stakeholders to find innovative ways to achieve sustainable development.
Welcome back. We're glad you're still with us. And Tracy, before we go into the organization's work, I want to go to you personally. And I'm really curious what drew you into this space and what captured you about this issue.
So I founded a social enterprise in 2010 called Taking Care of Business. And the purpose of that social enterprise is to help unemployed mothers start small businesses so that they can eradicate poverty in their families. And so we work with women, we work with families, and we measure our work using a tool called the Greenlight tool. And that gives us a lot of granularity into what is changing in her life over time. And what we saw that she was spending, the second most important thing she was spending her money on was education. Because she knows that the ticket out of poverty starts with high quality education. Your chances are really high if you give your children a great quality education. But what we discovered is that most of the education money was actually being spent on transport. She was transporting her children outside of her community in search of better quality education. And that really was the sort of founding idea for Grow ECD. We know she's looking for aspirant education. She knows what she wants and she's going to find it. Why can't she find it in her community? And if we could bring 5-star early learning into every community and she found it there, we thought we could convince her to spend her money that she was spending on transport on school fees. We could help the women then run a financially sustainable ECD center, but it had to be excellent. It couldn't be a copycat business. It had to be significantly different to what was in her community already. And that's really where the idea for Grow ECD started in 2014.
So you're saying that instead of her traveling out, so the ECD that's just next to her there builds up their quality of education so that she doesn't have to go very far. I mean, that's really amazing because it's about access, and access is such a big part of the whole equation. But is there a moment where you saw the story closer home, or one that really stayed with you and showed you why this matters?
Well, at the time, my own personal story when I came up with this idea was actually in 2012 and we implemented in 2014. I was pregnant with my third child and I had a wonderful woman who helped me raise my children, and she had a 1-year-old. And I, realized that my child was highly likely to get quality education. And Zianda was her name, was doing her best, but she was also doing exactly the same thing. She was transporting her 1-year-old outside of her community in search of better quality education. And her 1-year-old's name is Indy, and I had Indy in mind when I created Grow ECD. How do we make sure Indy gets the same quality education as my Abby? And I'm pleased to say that Indy did. Indy's now, she's now 14 years old and she's doing really well. But that was really the thinking. I want to really, access, not just access. Access doesn't change if it's not quality. And for us, it's all about quality.
Yeah. So I think Indy deserves a program named after her in Grow ECD. The Indie program. That's lovely. So let's talk about technology, because this is where Grow ECD story really becomes interesting, especially for those of us who are working with digital tools to provide better access and to serve communities. Could you tell us more about the digital tools that Grow ECD is building to make sure that your services are reaching the people who need it most?
So Grow ECD has built an ECD management platform. It's called Grow Giraffe. The reason it's called Giraffe is that the giraffe is the tallest animal on the savannah, and it can see far, far and wide, and it's very gracious. So it reminds us of who that ECD owner is. She has a vision. She's overseeing everything within, and often highly respected by her community. And so the way this happened is we built Grow as a formula, as a recipe. And we built it, I always use puzzle pieces because we're in ECD. We built it one puzzle piece at the time. We wanted to make sure that she had absolutely everything that she needed to run a 5-star early learning center. Everything from curriculum to equipment, to teacher training, to health and safety, to financial management, to parent communication, every form, every policy, like a business in a box model. And we did that manually. We created an enrollment form and we wrote the policy and we created a curriculum paper-based. And then in 2018, we were very fortunate to get funding from Grand Challenges Canada, and they said, we love this business in a box model. That's really replicable and scalable. What do you need to scale? And our answer was technology. So we basically took that 48-piece puzzle and we built a platform. So everything you need to run a high-quality ECD center is now on your mobile phone. Whether that is your curriculum, which is a multimedia curriculum where you can watch a video, you can hear a voice note, to capturing your income and expenses, to doing your learner assessments, to communicating with parents with a newsletter, to accessing a massive resource database. Everything that we built is available. We initially did it for centers that we were partnering with only. And then in 2021, we decided this thing was too impactful to keep small. And so we made it free for anybody to use in South Africa. So we have had more than 10,000 ECD owners download our app. On a daily basis, we have 5,500 using it actively.
Wow, those are big numbers.
And we're getting incredibly high retention. So you often see, you will see a dip in December. Obviously, our schools closed for their long summer holiday. And this year, by the time we got back in January, we had nearly the same amount of users. So it really has become the tool. If you want to run a quality ECD center in South Africa, you use the Grow Giraffe app. It's got very high ratings. And it becomes a distribution platform, but it's more than that, it's a coach. So if you tell me to do learner assessments, I don't know how to do learner assessments. But embedded in this platform is I have training, I have resources, I actually have the learner assessment tool, and it's a series of clicking buttons. It asks a question, you assess the learner, and you click yes or no, and then I get a report, and that report can be automatically transmitted to the parent.
Wow.
And so number one, she's doing new things, but she's doing new things in the proper way that are actually making her life easier, and her whole center becomes more aspirant because parents are going, wow, we don't get this in other ECD centers. They do learner assessments. We don't get formal reports. We get handwritten reports. And so, it's got so many multiple benefits that we're seeing. And then, of course, as an organization, we get incredibly rich data. So every time a learner assessment is done, we can get the data and say programmatically, like the big Thrive by 5 study, we're getting that data in real time. We don't have to wait for a big annual study because we can see how learners are doing.
Directly from the ground, and that evidence is so important even as you plan your future programs and expansions and what you need to focus on. And from our perspective at the Open Institute, this connects to a broader theme that is really close to us as well: the use of open and accessible technology to serve citizens and to expand civic participation and opportunity. And we also built a tool that we built specifically for African contexts, because we realized that people need a tool to collect data and to manage data, but what was available was very complex, was very expensive, was very high. It needed high feature phones to use it. You need to be really tech savvy to use it. So we realized there was a gap, and so we created a tool that is lightweight, is simple, is easy to use. That's kind of like a one-stop shop for data collection, data management. And because in Africa we have so many languages, we made sure that it has multilingual support. And the tool is called Sabasi, and we want to tell you a little more about it. So let's pause here and take a breath.
Sabasi is a tool that we developed at the Open Institute years ago as a data collection tool that could be used in the field, that could be used in places without internet connection, and with low feature phones that are usually used by many field teams in Africa, in our African context. Right now we have Sabasi Suite, which is a suite of tools that all manage data in one place. So you can create your survey, you collect your data, and you manage and report your data within the same tool. It's free for grassroots organizations. So if you'd like to try Sabasi, visit sabasi.io or download Sabasi from the Google Play Store or the iPhone App Store.
Thank you everyone for still being here. So we're going to continue with this very engaging conversation. And we are still talking about the technology behind what Grow ECD is doing. And we know that building technology for low-income, mobile-first users in Africa has specific challenges and constraints, like we were saying before. And for you, Tracy, what did you have to learn? What did you have to unlearn about building ed tech, as we call it, educational technology, that fits into the context of the people that you're serving?
So I think we faced exactly the same challenge as you. Building ECD management platforms, there are many around, but everyone, and we didn't want to build a platform, but everyone we looked at was not built for the women that we serve and her unique context. Many would only work on a laptop. Many were far too complicated. And then many only did part of the job as well. So she would need, if she had apps, she would need 20 apps and none of them spoke to each other, so there would be an app for attendance and then there'd be an app for finances maybe, but they were different apps. So that was something we realized we had to build our own app. And then I think the real challenge is finding that sweet spot between it being complex enough to grow with her, but simple enough to essentially manage her anxiety. Let's look at the finance module. I'm an accountant by profession, so when we built the finance module the first time round, because we're about to relaunch our app again, version 2. We've had it for 5 years. We're launching version 2 in June. We actually built it very, very simply. Very, very simply. And then based on her feedback over the last year, she says, my business is a little bit more complicated than that. I actually charge multiple fees. I have sibling discounts. I want to know who's paid me, who hasn't paid me. And based on that feedback, we've now built a module that isn't an accounting module, because that was the other tendency. Do you give her everything and build this complex system because accounting systems are complex? And just finding that sweet spot between what does she need and how do we bring just enough to really get that balance between complexity and simplicity, and meet her needs. And we're very pleased with what we've developed, and we tested it with our super user group 2 weeks ago, and the feedback has just been amazing. She said to me, you listened, you heard me, and now I'm going to use this system for everything, because she was often not using the finance module because it didn't meet her needs. And our goal is a one-stop shop. We don't want her to have to go anywhere else to run her center. We need to make sure we meet all of her needs and make her life easier.
So your tools are already making a difference in these women's lives. I don't know if there's something else you can mention about the difference it's making even for the children that are in the care of this business owner, this woman.
Yeah, I think, a teacher, an ECD owner's life is really busy. She wakes up, she gets to work often at 7 o'clock. She leaves at 6 o'clock because she's serving that working parent. And we expect a lot of her, but can you imagine doing all your planning while you've got 3-year-olds running around in the chaos? So she then has to go home and maybe do some planning for the next day. And the reality is she doesn't. So what often happens is children are given blocks and maybe a blank piece of paper and some crayons because she hasn't prepared for the day. And that's really where our curriculum comes in. We have created 200 lesson plans, a unique lesson plan for every day, broken into 20 themes. And so when there's a theme about my insects, she has all the resources right there and then in a structured plan. At 9 o'clock, you're going to do the morning ring, and these are the questions you could ask about insects on Monday. On Tuesday, we're going to do some art, and this art is going to look like this by Friday. But on Tuesday, we're doing the gluing exercise where we're putting the leaf down so that we can put a creepy crawly on the leaf. And by just showing her the sequence of events and presenting it all to her, she's actually using it. And that really is the true test. Are things changing in the classroom? And this is happening to teachers that are not getting any training from us. They're simply getting our app. We offer a lot of other support in 2 centers that we invest in. But the 5,000 centers that are just using our app, picking it up off the Google Play Store, are now using a curriculum that they weren't using before. We've got centers managing their finances because in order to get subsidized by our government, you have to produce a set of financial statements. And this is where the mismatch between policy and the reality on the ground. She doesn't even know what a set of financial statements is. The way she's been tracking her money up until now is, I always say, money in and money out. Oh, you gave me my fees. Oh, we need to buy some bread. She gives the money. She really has, before we often get to her, she thinks she's making money, but she doesn't really know how. There's never any money left at the end of the day. And while she might want to get subsidized, she can't get subsidized because she's non-compliant with the requirements. And by putting a simple tool in her hands that's intuitive, that's easy to use, she's now producing a set of financial records, which then opens up the pathway to subsidization. And she actually knows whether she's making money or not. And many times she's really surprised to know that she isn't making any money. And then she knows that. And then she can make some choices as to what she's going to do with her business, really treating it like a real business. And we need to take care of our money in order to take care of our business. So there's so many ways that by using all the features, we are actually seeing a real education business being run. Whereas before, in many cases, it was largely a child minding business.
So there's mindset shifting and there's behavior change in this work. And just putting the tool in their hands is transforming the way they do business, which is really, really valuable. And also people argue sometimes that people don't want more tools or, people can't use tools. But your story is actually proving that a tool can go beyond maybe even what you intended it for, and even widen the scope for this person who's using it. So that's a really good success.
Yeah, and I just want to come in there because we made a mistake when we launched our tool. We spoke all about the tool because we were so proud about the tool. And what we realized is she didn't know what we were talking about. So coming back to this issue of learner assessments, we said, I've got this wonderful tool called learner assessments, wonderful, and nobody used it. What we then had to do is we actually run an amazing amount of webinars, and we talk about, the webinar is, why should children be assessed? Then we talk about how children should be assessed. And then only at the end of the webinar, I say, well, if you'd like to assess your learners, here's a tool. And that seems to work really well because she's not going to pick up a tool if she doesn't know why she needs to pick up a tool. And I think a lot of people make that mistake with technology. Just because you know doesn't mean she knows. And she doesn't know it's important because nobody's told her. And that's been a really successful strategy. You've got to give her the why. You've got to give her the why, not just the tool.
Yeah, really important. And I know you're all curious about Grow ECD and their work and what they're doing. So we're going to take this opportunity to show you a little bit about them and their work and Grow ECD in action.
We cannot rest until every neighborhood has access to 5-star early learning. We know that the first years of life are crucial to our children's development, but the reality is that substandard early education is still the daily reality for most communities. And unless we fix early education in South Africa, we will stay stuck in inequality and poverty. We need to build a healthy, sustainable ecosystem that empowers every person in a child's life. One teacher can change the course for a generation of learners, but she needs more than a funder. She needs a partner, a mentor, a guide that will walk the road with her and give her proven tools and a recipe for success. We're working with ECD owners, teachers, parents, and other organizations to make sure that excellent preschool education is accessible, affordable, and sustainable in every neighborhood.
So Tracy, let's zoom out. Grow ECD is operating in South Africa, but the challenges that you're addressing are really widespread in different parts of the world. And what do you think other people or other parts of the world, other organizations like yours, can learn from your approach?
I think what they can learn from our approach is to really take a holistic look at the business of early learning, and make sure that the services that you're offering to the sector are as holistic as possible. In many cases, and the mistakes we've made in South Africa, is that she's interacting with multiple organizations, all trying to deliver, a piece of the puzzle to her, and she gets confused. This puzzle piece doesn't fit with that puzzle piece. And so really a holistic view of ECD. Put yourself in her shoes, and where we would like to take Grow ECD into the future. So we've redeveloped our app. The first version couldn't be used outside the country. The new version that will be available soon will be able to be used anywhere in the world. And we would really love to find developing countries, particularly developing countries. Grow is all about impact. We want to make sure that children who are not getting quality education now get the opportunity for quality education. And we're really looking for country partners. We believe that our app can spread around the world, but also our know-how, how to actually implement, how to journey with an ECD owner, how to train a teacher, how to help her improve her business, all that know-how. We're really looking for country partners who want to learn from us and want to take this model as far and wide as possible. And also we don't want to do it ourselves. We want to work through people who have experience in their own countries. There will have to be adaptations for cultural differences, geographic differences, language differences. But we believe we've really got something here that can change the world.
Yeah. So what does success look like for Grow ECD, but also beyond Grow ECD for the sector and the children that you're trying to reach?
So coming back to our vision statement, our vision is to have a 5-star ECD in every neighborhood. And what we mean by that is if we can get just even one high quality ECD in a neighborhood, what that does is it actually transforms the standard in the neighborhood, because that becomes the new standard. And then what happens is women who are competing against that new standard have to up their game to compete for parents who are paying fees. And so our vision now is not just a 5-star ECD in South Africa, in every neighborhood in South Africa. We'd love to have a 5-star ECD in every neighborhood in Africa. in the developing world specifically, where children are just not getting what they need to thrive by 5.
So if you could talk to a funder or a partner, a country partner, like you said, directly right now, what would you say to them?
So if I could talk to a funder or a country partner, I would say we have done the hard work. We've done the hard work. We're going to be able to give you something that, relative to your country and your circumstances, is probably 80% complete. And all you're going to have to do in terms of investment is add that localization element. And let's not reinvent the wheel. The hard work has been done, and now we can get catalytic impact, because you're starting with all these learnings, with 12 years of learning of all the mistakes we've made, and all the feedback we've had from our thousands of users, fully integrated, learned from, built on, and essentially you get a business in a box to roll out quality ECD in your country.
I love that. So you had it, they have the experience, they have the package, they've tried it, they've tested it. So all you need to do is 20% of the work. They've done 80% of it. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We've come to the end of our conversation. If you would like to get to know more about our guest, about the Grow ECD organization, you'll find all the information below. Also, if you'd like to partner with the Open Institute, all our information is below, and our name, our handles are the Open Institute on all social media. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been the Open Chats, brought to you by the Open Institute. Until next time, stay open, stay curious, and let's continue building a world that's equal, accessible, and open for everyone.